Hey, board gamers, BJ from Board Game Gumbo here, back with another episode of Gumbo Live. It's episode number 103, Gumbo Live, the number one-ish Facebook Live talk show dedicated to board game. Hey, on Tuesday nights at 8:30, we're holding on to the top spot in our time slot, so we'll call it that. Our special guest tonight, Josh Lobkowitz of Travel Buddy Games, the Great Barrier Reef card game, which is out. Well, it's a long name, and it's out on Kickstarter right now. Board Game Gumbo, a proud member of Punchboard Media. Check out some of our other fine members like Draft Mechanic Podcast, Jake and Danielle Bach. They've got a podcast about beer and board games and anything they can do to tie those two together. Punchboard Media, where we all bring something to the table. Hit us up on social media tonight, on Twitter or on Facebook at Board Game Gumbo. And Josh Lobkowitz and I will be looking for your questions in the chat. But enough blather. Let's get right to our special guest. Hopefully he's coming up here. Josh, there he is. Hey, man, welcome to the show.
What's up, man? Thanks for having me on.
It's been a while since we see each other, I guess, Gen Con last time? Yeah, probably. Because I haven't been to convention since then, and you have, but we haven't seen each other. Hey, look, I know you get pitched all the time because I actually watched you get pitched at Gen Con at one of the tables. I don't think it was this game. It was something else. So give us the elevator pitch. Who is Josh Lobkowitz, and what is Travel Buddy Games?
I think that trying to sell myself that way is harder than trying to sell a board game. But I can drop it down to a couple sentences. So Travel Buddy Games is the merging of my two biggest passions, which are board games and travel. And so that tells you a little bit of what you need to know about me. I've been in the board game industry for 6 years now, primarily with Gray Fox Games, and have now started Travel Buddy Games as my own kind of side project. And when I can get away from conventions and the publishing life, I do like to get out into the world and travel as much as I can. And kind of prior to doing the board game thing, I did freelance writing, which fit in well with travel. I lived abroad in both the Netherlands and China, and now I'm back here doing this thing and trying to bring those things together.
So normally, the chat crew can vouch for me. Normally, I have a little Disney water bottle here, my little Coronado Springs. I brought this one just for you. I got Zion National Park here. I got Moab, Utah. So a little bit, maybe not as exotic as China or living in the Netherlands, but something.
You're rocking the Nalgene.
I'm rocking the Nalgene. This thing has got a lot of use over the years. Holy cow, a lot of use since I had it. But yeah, Travel Buddy Games. It's a great tagline. In fact, I think I have a picture from it somewhere. Where did you come up with that tagline?
We brainstormed for a while trying to come up with the best way to kind of present this and figure out where we wanted the game to sort of sit. I came up with it working with the graphic designer, who I think did an awesome job on the logo.
Sure.
And we kind of thought that traveling is a social activity, board games are a social activity, and I so much when I travel like to do as much as I can to interact with kind of local people and see local places and really try and get as much in the culture as I can. That notion of sociality was something we wanted to keep in there. So Travel Buddy seemed to capture that, and then games just tells you right what it is.
So take a look at what I have right here. That's the logo that I found on the Kickstarter page, or maybe I think it's from your web page. Sometimes, and I didn't even check with you before the show started. Sometimes there's a story behind the pictures in there. Does that map have anything to do with the company, with you, with your travels?
No, I wish there were something exciting I I could tell you about it, but it's just another image that I think kind of captures the motif of what we're going for. It makes a nice backdrop for that logo, and we actually have 7 or 8 different logos depending on where we're going to use them. They're all the same shape, obviously, but they have different color combinations. A couple black and white ones we use on letterhead or kind of watermark type of things. And then the other ones just, if I want to put that on a teal box, I obviously can't. So we have another alternative. But the map provided a nice neutral backdrop to showcase that. And I use that for my profile pic in a lot of places where I don't want it just floating in a sea of white.
I was hoping that, boy, you were on that train between Durango and Silverton, and that's where the idea of Travel Buddy came up. Oh, well, it was worth a shot. So tell me, Josh, what do you think, as a guy who's traveled everywhere and played a lot of board games all over the place, what makes a good travel game?
I mean, I think for me that there are 2 great types of travel games. I mean, the first and foremost is just the really approachable small package ones, like the Perplexed line that does their Pack-O games.
Oh, okay.
I love those, and they're always in my pack when I travel because they're so easy to bring wherever I want and set up in a small space. So I want a game that is easy to. What's that?
I played I think is one of them. I played 2 of them. That's the ones you're talking about with the little 3 letters, and they look like a pack of gum, right?
Yeah, exactly.
What's your favorite out of all games?
So,
Because they have so many of them.
Rum is my favorite. Yeah, it's a bit like Rummy, set collection with bottles of rum, but yeah, I mean those are top of my list because they're so easy to travel with. I never have to think twice about whether I'm gonna have space in my carry-on or my backpack. I can just kind of throw them in there. The other types of game that I like to travel with, I think, are less travel games, right? A travel game is very much a thing that sets up easily, fits in the backpack. I can do it when I'm waiting for the train. I want them to be fast and stuff like that. But then, the gamer in me sometimes wants something that's going to be deeper. And I still care about compact, but then I start looking at what my depth to size ratio is. So Carl Chudik's Innovation is one that often makes it in there because it's just 2 decks side by side, but I can sit down at the hotel and bust that out, over the course of an hour with my wife and most frequent traveling companion. And so that fits the bill for me too. Though what we're going for with Travel Buddy is closer to the Pack-O games than it is to Innovation.
Yeah, probably so. Hey, Thomas is checking in. He says, hey, what's up? Thomas, you got any questions for Josh or travel games? Let us know. Joel Lewis, the designer of a very travel game, Fluttering Souls. I don't know if you saw that while you were at Gen Con. A little Monarch butterfly card game. Sort of in the vein of that 7 Wonders Duel, where you have different pyramids and different shapes and you're battling back, but it's more of a set collection game, more of that aspect of it. So Joel's checking in. Joel, what's your favorite one besides Fluttering Souls? And Steven says he's played and Hue. I have not tried Hue. I don't know that one. Do you?
Yeah, that's the one with the different color shapes that you're starting to expand, and it burns my brain in a really interesting way.
All right, so you mentioned 2 ways. Here's a way that one of the reasons that I'll carry a game around is, especially if I'm going to go on a scout trip or going to a campground or any kind of travel where I know that there are people that haven't played games before. I want to bring something that's not going to be familiar to them. Does that make sense? Not a standard card game that's like, oh, this one's just like this. I want something that's they're going to see a tiny little package and think, wow, I didn't even realize that board games do that. And one of the games that I have is a Fake Artist Goes to New York. Little tiny oink package, right?
It's a great
and
one.
Then you pop it open and it's got the little markers and the little chips, and then you teach the game, and it's amazing how people's eyes just light up that they can't believe that such a small package has such a fun game.
Yeah, I mean that's part of the joy of gaming generally, isn't it? I mean, when we're all kind of proselytizers for this hobby, and it's because we remember that spark of excitement the first time we got hooked, and we want to give everybody else that same buzz. But I mean, a lot of that is stuff that crossed my mind when I was dreaming up Travel Buddy. I mean, I've spent a lot of time traveling and in hostels, and there are decks of cards, and sometimes the staple games that you see. I mean, I've played Shang-Chi, Chinese chess, with people in the street, and that's fun, but it's not the sort of thing that I can get a group of hostelers together around and we can,
Right.
have beers and be like, let's play this 2-player heavy abstract strategy game. But the Paco games has one called Lie, which is essentially liar's dice that's been distilled into a deck of cards. And that's one that I can play with strangers. And I don't know, it's a great opportunity. I mean, so often you just have a regular deck of playing cards and you can sit around with people from all over the world and learn whatever their local variant is on a classic game like Rummy, or even, Go Fish, Old Maid, whatever they're sort of the games that they grew up with. It's a lot of fun to explore that stuff. And I hope that, someday the games that we make can end up in those situations where someone goes to a hostel and drops on a table and goes, hey, let me teach this to you. It only takes 5 minutes to set up and we can all have a beer and play this thing that you've never seen before.
Thomas has a good question for you. He says, hey, where do you want to go? And I saw actually you posting about this on Twitter. Where do you want to go once world travel opens up again? Because if I remember right, you had a trip that you had planned just like I did.
Yeah, number one on my list right now is Albania, and
Okay.
that was the trip. That was the trip that we had to cancel. It was meant to go off at the end of this month, and just didn't seem like that was going to be a great time to do that.
No.
But yeah, I mean, Albania is a fascinating place that it's like so many people don't think of it as a travel destination, but like it's if Greece is and Italy is, then Albania definitely is, and they're in that same region. You will find similar food, and they have a beautiful Riviera. So yeah, I want to go to Albania. I want to go to Durrës and Saranda. I want to drive up and down the Albanian coast and see some of the most beautiful kind of road trip roads I've ever seen in photographs. And they also have a really fascinating culture. I mean, the Albanian country has been occupied by so many different sort of nations over the course of their history that you can go to a place like Saranda and, drive to ruins 30 minutes away that have, Roman architecture in them, and then like the remnants of an Ottoman mosque and seals of previous conquerors. And there's this very fascinating kind of overlap of history there that is the sort of stuff that I love to explore when I go abroad.
That's my favorite part, is looking at the history. Hey, Sean Jones, Mr. Sean says, Chuddick, a great travel game designer. I'm curious, Josh, where do you stand on the innovation versus Matanai? Where do you rank them between the two?
I mean,
It's been a big thing in the Gumbo because some people really don't like innovation compared to Matanai or the other way,
Yeah, I mean, I love both of those games, and so I get to straddle the middle a little bit, but I prefer innovation, and I mean, part of that is probably influenced by my wife, who is also my most frequent gaming partner, in that she does not straddle the line. She loves innovation and she hates Matanai. I like both of them. I think that Matanai is a great evolution of Glory to Rome, and I know that that's also the subject of some conflict as well. That some people have feel that the game got worse, and for me, I don't. I feel like it got better. Glory to Rome, I always felt like I got to run my engine too much, and Matanai cuts me off right where I want to be cut off, and I love that. But yeah, I think that Chuddick is a great designer all around, and his games make it into my pack quite often when I travel.
Joel's got a good idea for you, Josh. He says use that Kickstarter money and go visit him down there. That's it. He's from down under. Go visit the actual Great Barrier Reef. Have you been?
I haven't been. It's a dream, and I've learned to scuba dive recently. I started taking lessons this past year and was on the course, a path to do some training and become a dive master before the whole COVID-19 thing went off, which obviously stopped a lot of that right in its tracks. Sure. It's absolutely on the bucket list, and it's good to know that I have somebody to play games with when I make it down there.
Joel will be glad to do that with you. BJ from Board Game Gumbo. I've got my guest here, Josh from Travel Buddy Games, and we're talking spicy games. And one of the ones that I know, because you've talked about this game before, we've been in person, is the Mystery Rummy series, a game I've never played from a designer I absolutely love. What's the deal with Mystery Rummy, and which one is your favorite of all the iterations?
Well, the deal with this is I'll plug this a little bit because Mystery Rummy was kind of my gateway game. The way that people kind of cite Settlers or Carcassonne. I mean, those games came early in my sort of transition to the board game world. It was certainly Settlers that made me discover Board Game Geek, but Mystery Rummy was the series of games that I just kind of found out of the blue at a bookstore one day and went, oh, this seems like a neat evolution of the classic card game. Let me try it. And they've been in my collection ever since. Jack the Ripper might be my favorite one, but I'm someone who loves variety so much that it's always hard for me. I love the Jack the Ripper Mystery Rummy. I don't necessarily. It's nice. Erp is a fun one that is, a Mystery Rummy game that doesn't technically carry the Mystery Rummy label. But yeah, I mean, they're fantastic little evolutions of Rummy. If you grew up playing Rummy and you're familiar with the concept of draw a card, play your meld, discard, and try to go out, that's still the core of the game. Except each one has a great thematic tie-in, and then some special cards that manipulate the rules and let you play out the story that they're trying to tell. And the Jack the Ripper one is a lot of fun because every round can end with the Ripper escaping or the Ripper being caught. And there's a neat mechanism by which you can call a vote based on the evidence that you hold about who you think will be convicted of being Jack the Ripper. And you can get some bonus points if you're right. And I don't know, it has nice player interaction and it's a neat narrative. And I got kind of hooked on the lore once upon a time when I saw like a History Channel show about Jack the Ripper. And of course, the case is still a thing that people speculate about to this day. And it's fascinating.
You have a heckler, someone named Alex Goldsmith or Goldsmith, maybe. The best Mystery Rummy is Baseball Highlights 2045.
I mean, that's bonkers. The game is amazing, as Mike Fitzgerald's designs always are, but It's not a Mystery Rummy, and Alex knows it. And he can take it up with Mike if he wants to argue the credentials.
It's not a rummy game. At least I don't see anything rummy about it. And I will pick Mike's nose a little bit. Dragon Island wasn't exactly my favorite game of 2018. That was a pretty rough. I don't think you ever got to play that one from Mike. No, his board game. Yeah, that was
never did.
Probably best for you to just move along. I wouldn't worry about that. So. Yes,
yeah, Baseball Highlights is one that I like and got introduced to thanks to Alex, and I play the app pretty regularly. Diamonds is a staple in my collection, and despite the fact that I've been in this industry for some time, I mean, the first time I spoke to Mike Fitzgerald was maybe 3 years into working in the board game industry, and he's the only person I've ever met that I was like a little bit starstruck. I had to do the fan thing and be like, hey, I just wanted to tell you what an influence this had on me as a gamer and now somebody in the industry. I mean, he's a cool guy and he's made a lot of stuff that I'm proud to have in my collection.
I paid MSRP for Dragon Island. I was just like you. I was starstruck. I actually took a picture and I got him to sign the game. Now I didn't like the game, but I love Baseball Highlights 2045 that much. So it's one of the games I played the most probably out of any other game, but not so much Dragon Island, but the Mystery Rummy series. I love card games and I love Rummy. I love that. I mean, we grew up playing Gin Rummy. That's one of the games we played. So I'd love to try it. It's got anything like that. BJ from Board Game Gumbo. Got my guest here, Josh from Travel Buddy Games. We're talking about spicy games, and here's a game that I think my wife would like. We both like Codenames, but she gets kind of sick of the big group one. Then Codenames Duet came out. Lots of people have talked about it, and you've played it, right, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, it's another one that's kind of heavy in the rotation right now. It's one of the ones that we've been playing in our quarantine. And yeah, I mean, I liked the original Codenames. I love Codenames Duet. It's 2 players or 2 teams cooperative. And what that does is it eliminates the downtime that's present in the kind of basic code names. I mean, so many times I play with a group, and while the clue masters are thinking up what to say, everybody just kind of sits there quietly, right, waiting for the beat to drop. And this eliminates that because you're both playing on the same board. You're using one double-sided clue card, and each of you is trying to clue the things that you have to the other with some overlap in clues.
Okay.
And you only have so many moves to get there. And then when you run out of clues, you come to this sudden death moment of, well, there aren't going to be any more clues to give, but we still have X many things left. And we're just kind of drawing on the stuff that we think from the previous clues in the game to do this sudden death round. And it's really satisfying. I'd say that when we play the basic version, we win about 80% of the time. And then there's an included kind of missions mode that adjusts the way you use the clues. And that's a bit harder. I think that our win rate on playing those is about 20% of the time.
Ooh.
So it keeps me coming back to do better.
One of the things that I liked about Codenames is how they've been able to extend it into other areas with pictures, and now they're doing all the thematic ones.
Mm-hmm.
Does the system allow you to bring in those other sets that you have and still do duet, or is it tied to the words and the system that they have inside this box?
No, I mean, I think that you could play that with any set. I mean, the thing that sets duet apart from anything else is your double-sided cards with the percentage overlap of what clues you want to get. And
Okay.
I think if you own duet and then you have other sets of code names, I think you could probably just pull the word cards out and put the other cards in, and it would be exactly the same experience.
Okay, because one of the things about games like Codenames or Medium or Just One is the interchangeability of the words and the systems. We played Just One with Paul Grogan online the other day, and he doesn't actually own Just One. He used his code. He's a big CGE guy, so he brought his codename words, and it worked just fine. We just used codename words instead. So one of the things that
I bet you could do the same here.
That would be fun. What about pictures? Would that make it too tough to do Codenames duet with pictures?
No, I mean, again, you're just going to use the grid, right? That's the double-sided grid, and the countdown on clues is all you need. You could replace it with any other version. I think it would work just fine. Speaking as someone who doesn't work for CGE and can't actually promote their products this way, I'd do it.
Sure, we're just talking off the cuff, of course. So, yeah, is this one of your wife and you top 10 games as a couple?
Yeah, probably. I mean, again, it's tough for me to pick favorites. I'm doing my best to go more minimal-ish and have brought the board game collection down from like 250 games to 150 games. But
wow.
Yeah, I don't know what the top 10 are. I know that this one is giving me a lot of joy right now, and that counts for something.
I'm sure you're like me. If you play a game and you bring it to the table and your spouse likes the game, I generally like the game more. Hey, I'm the one that plays more board games. I'm the one that's really more into the hobby. I don't know about your wife, but between me and my wife, I'm way more into the hobby. So if I find a game like we found Santa Monica from AEG the other day, and she was like, "Oh, I really like this game," or Wingspan. I mean, she just loved it. So that instantly brought it to a higher level to me because I know that I'm going to be able to play with it, and it's a game that I like playing. But it just gets a little bit of brownie points with me if my wife likes it too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you can make that even more general, right? I mean, it's a game is always more enjoyable when the people that you play with enjoy it, whoever those people are. I mean, gaming, like I said at the sort of top of the show, it's inherently social for me, and I'd rather play a B game with people that I really wanted to be hanging out with than play an A game with strangers. And so if a game,
Josh, do you have a game in your collection that you've kept despite the fact that you're really the only one in your game group that likes it? Have you ever done that?
Yeah, I mean, I've had games that I've hung on to for a long time because of that, and most of them have I've eventually gotten rid of them. I still have a couple right now. I'm the Boss is one that doesn't get as much applause as I would give it when I bring it out, but I love it too much to get rid of it. Indonesia is one that's tough to get to the table, and my wife actively would never play that game, but I'm going to keep that anyway. And I mean, the PAX series, the Eklund PAX Porfiriana and PAX Renaissance are games that need a very specific partner to play with, but I like them enough that I hold out hope for finding that person as a regular game buddy.
BJ from Board Game Gumbo. I've got my guest here, Josh from Travel Buddy Games. We're talking spicy games, and there's a whole series of games that I have never gotten to play. But I hear Tom from the Dice Tower always talking about whenever a new one comes out. And you were talking off air about one called Point. Hopefully, I'm saying it right.
Yeah.
So tell me about Point. It's part of the gift series, right?
Yeah, the GIP series of games is is a series of abstracts that have really they're deep but not complex. So basically, the rules for these games tend to be 2 pages about how you can move your pieces, and then the rest is kind of depth of strategy. They all have something that makes the board feel tighter or less usable as time goes on. So the games tend to start feeling pretty open, like I can do my own thing, but tend to escalate to a kind of knife fight in a phone booth.
Oh, I love
Um,
those.
Punkt is one of the ones that we've been playing lately, and it's one of the toughest ones for me. If you've been gaming for a while, or if you know about classic games, there was a game called Twixt that
Yeah,
was an
sure.
Avalon Hill game.
That was
Punkt reminds me an awful lot of that.
Alex. I can't think of his name. He's no longer around, but yeah, he passed
Hmm.
away. But a pretty famous designer back in the 70s or 80s. Yeah.
So
Twix, you played Twix? Because that's tough to get a copy of nowadays.
yeah, I've played it and I still have a copy.
Okay.
I cut my teeth on that in middle school and loved it. And Punkt reminds me an awful lot of that. The goal of the game, you can see the pieces on the board, black pieces and white pieces. Each
I've
player
been
has a
staring at
color.
this picture, Josh, and I can't figure out what's going on in this game. It doesn't look
Yeah,
like anything I've played before. So walk
it
me through it.
probably isn't. I mean, the goal is to connect 2 opposite sides of this hex with your own color pieces. And
Okay.
so on your turn, you can place one of your pieces on the board, or you can move a piece that you already have on the board. You might be able to see in this photo that there's a slightly darker kind of center hexagon, and you can't place your
Oh yeah,
starting pieces.
I
Yeah,
see it.
you're not permitted to place starting pieces in that spot. But otherwise, you can place them wherever you want. And then when you move them along an axis of what's called their punkt. And so if you see some of the white pieces have a bright white circle and some of the black pieces have a dark black circle, that's the position you move your pieces from. And by moving pieces, you can straddle other players' pieces, you can pin them down, you can bridge between other pieces. And you really kind of have to think 3-dimensionally. Mental spatial management is not something I'm generally very good at. And
Yeah.
so I like to play this, but it twists my brain in ways that my wife Dawn and I play, and she sees the moves better than I do, and she'll go, "Oh, I know what you're gonna do," and I'm like, "You do? Quick, tell me."
Yeah, tell me what we're doing. Well, it looked a little bit like that Reiner Knizia game that I have with the I can't remember. It's got the 2 colors on each end, and you're trying to match up the colors as you put them on. But it's the typical Reiner Knizia scoring where you always want to bring your last place score up because that's your actual score. The low,
Oh,
it's not
ingenious.
ingenious. That's it. Yeah, ingenious. So I was thinking of that, but then it's only 2 colors, and like you said, it's got that off-color dot. And that's the axis of rotation, right? That's
Yeah,
where it rotates?
you move your pieces from that point, so you can move them, across the board as long as that piece stays in a straight line, and then rotate it where they land. So, it's certainly one of the more complicated GIF games for my brain. But I don't know, if you like abstracts, the whole series is a joy to play. And honestly, I think this may be the ugliest of the series. They honestly generally look like works of art on the table. And I don't think this is an exception. I think it looks great, but some of them are downright beautiful.
And that is punkt. Say it again.
I mean, I say punkt, but
Punkt. Okay.
again, I didn't design it. I didn't put the umlaut on there. So maybe somebody more familiar with language can give us both a lesson.
I'm convinced it's just a made up word, but that's a pretty cool looking game. And my wife and I both like those kind of abstract games, so we're gonna have to try it. BJ from Board Game Gumbo, got my guest here, Josh from Travel Buddy Games, and we are talking spicy hot games and a spicy hot game that you are probably super ecstatic funded almost right away, and that's the Great Barrier Reef card game from Travel Buddy Games. All right, Josh.
Woo, that's a great game.
Right. That's a spicy game. You've got the chat crew right here. Give us the elevator pitch. Tell us about the game. Who designed it? How'd you find it? What's the game all about?
So Keith Piggott designed this game, and he pitched it to us at a convention
Keith Piggott, you said.
last year. Yeah, I am. Honestly, Keith and I have known each other for a while from doing pitch meetings at conventions and him showing me stuff for Gray Fox. So I'm actually trying to remember if he pitched this to me at a show or if he just sent it to me afterwards. but as soon as he sent me the rule book for it, I knew that this was a clever system. It's got overlapping cards, which I like very much, kind of a la Hanshu. But it also, yeah, me too. It also has this mechanism that I've never seen anywhere else, which is the way that the market is resolved in this game. So when you're playing this, when you're playing the Great Barrier Reef game, the goal is to arrange the fish in a particular pattern. And so at the start of the game, you'll get random scorecards that tells you, hey, this fish wants to be in a block. This fish wants to be in diagonal lines. This fish wants to be in an L shape. And your goal is to create those patterns in order to score points. And every time you create the pattern, you multiply at the end game by whatever the scoring is at for that condition. So that's the puzzle overlaying part. The market part is that each of those cards has a number in the center, and that tells you what spot in the market you draw your replacement card from. And so this leads to some really interesting decisions in that.
Well, you're not kidding.
Sometimes I'm playing a card because it makes that pattern, and it doesn't matter what I put in my hand, except that's in my hand now, and I have to figure out how to use it. Sometimes I actively want a particular card, and if I can't make my pattern using that card, I got to find a way to play it in my reef anyway, so I can get the thing I want for the future.
It's
and
a stupidly
the
decision when you're trying to decide between those two things. Now, the stars make it helpful because if I remember right, that's the wild part, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
they all be wild, Keith. You're killing me with those decisions, man. No, you be honest. There's a juicy card that you really want, but it's the wrong number. But I really want this card.
And those lead to good moments, right? I mean, like sure. I love those kind of stories at the end of a game about the risks I took and when they paid off and when they didn't. And if I want that card bad enough, I will break a pattern I've already made to pick up the card that I want so that I can fix it later. And if I fix it, whoo boy, did I come out ahead. And if I never get to draw into that position, well, I might have just cost myself, 6, 8, 10 points. And then where will I be?
That picture I showed you earlier was a picture of a game between me and my nephew playing it on Tabletopia, I think, if I remember right. And one of the things that we talked about after the game was the push-pull when we were fighting over the little markers on each one of the market cards. And that's just another, for such a small box game, it's got these big decisions in it. How did Keith do that?
Yeah, I mean, he's got a knack, and the other designs I've seen from him have had similar presentations of simplicity with complexity hidden underneath, and that's something that I want to go for Travel Buddy games. I want these to teach really easily, right? I have a single page rule book. I want you to be able to teach this in a couple of minutes, and that's great. But I also want the gamers who are instrumental in helping support these projects to have a game that they're not going to play once or twice and then feel like they've played it out. I mean, I want games to have enough depth that you're going to play this, dozens or hundreds of times and feel like there are still meaningful decisions to be made. And I think this game does that.
All right. So one of the things I can't get from the Tabletopia, and Josh, by the way, everybody in the chat crew, if you want to play it, there's availability on TTS and on Tabletopia right now, right? You've got some versions. But one of the things you don't get the flavor from is how portable is this game? I know that was important to you. How are you going to pull that off? Because there's a lot of stuff inside this box, it looks like. Although I will tell you, the rule book was small. That's the game, right?
That's the game. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a small box, smaller than Innovation, smaller than Tishu, smaller than an Oink Games box. The game is
compared to that, or smaller than that, right? Pocket Mars,
little smaller than that.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I mean it's got five punchboard tokens and a big old stack of cards, and then 5 of those cool little coral markers, and then a little score pad.
Hey, Chris, we're talking the Great Barrier Reef card game from Travel Buddy Games out on Kickstarter right now. You probably know Christian Strain from doing his, of course, the Troubles game, but also for the stuff he does for Gray Fox Game. But tonight we're talking Travel Buddies games, Chris.
Chris did the graphic design for Reavers of Midgard.
Sure did. Yep, Reavers of Midgard, right?
Incredible. But yeah, the Great Barrier Reef card game is gonna fit in your pocket. I want you to easily put it in your backpack. I want you to easily put it in your carry-on. And I want you to get a lot of mileage out of this game, both in terms of actually taking it with you when you travel and in terms of replayability. And we're going to do everything we can to make sure all of our games have the smallest footprint possible so that it is easy for people to throw them in their bag and go.
All right, you know the shorts I'm talking about. Shorts that have the big front pockets and the big back pockets. This is one that I can unbutton that front pocket, slip it in, put it in the front pocket of my backpack, put it in the front little tiny pocket of my carry-on, right? You're a carry-on guy, I'm assuming, when you travel. It's just a tiny little 20-inch carry-on, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
I mean,
I've done 10 days in Europe with a 20-inch carry-on. What were you going to say?
I said you can fit this in any one of those places and still have room left over. Now if you're a woman, you're not going to be able to put them in your jean pockets because people don't make pants with pockets that women can use. They're all decorative.
It's decorative. Yeah, I don't understand that. My wife complains about that all the time. Yeah, so
well, she's right to be annoyed by it. Every time we go out, my wife wants to travel light. She's like, "Can you please carry my ID? I can't fit this in the pocket of my pants." And I'm like, "That's ridiculous." And sure.
So you've busted through a bunch of the stretch goals I saw. What's up next? If I remember right, you've got a couple of pretty cool upgrades for the Kickstarter, right?
Yeah, we've unlocked, we've doubled the amount of scoring cards in the game, which adds a crazy amount of variety and replayability. And now we're working on upgrading components and making the game look and feel as good as possible. So the next thing we're doing is the Spot UV upgrade for the box. Board gamers know what that is, and I want this to be a game that really kind of pops to your eye and pops off the shelf. I think we've managed to get no small portion of people who aren't generally board game backers on the campaign, which I'm really excited about. And I hope that when they get delivered a product that looks as good as this does, that they're, as proud to have it as we are to make it. We want to make sure that this looks like a premium product and we deliver a lot of value to our backers, because this was a Kickstarter in the truest sense of the word. There is no retailer waiting to stock this game. There is no distribution network waiting to hold on to it. This was a fund or die endeavor. And without the people who backed it, we couldn't make it. And we're really thankful that so many people are excited for it.
Kelly's one of the backers out there, and she says, we need women's cargo pants. But if she wants a copy of the game, she really, don't take a chance. It's really the Kickstarter where you need to get it, right?
Yeah. I mean, we're going to print enough to fulfill this Kickstarter and, some extra in hopes that we can find a market for this afterwards. Obviously, I'm going to be able to sell it through my website, and I'd love to find opportunities to get it into retail. But, this isn't a Gray Fox project. I have contacts in the industry, and I hope that will help me moving forward. But, from game designer to publisher is a leap, and there are no guarantees about where this game will end up. So, the way to get it is now.
Gosh, there's somebody behind you at your door trying to get in. Who is that? Somebody trying to get in. What is going on there? Somebody there. Oh my God, it's Keith. Keith Higgins.
What's up, Josh?
Hey, Keith.
Hey, Keith.
Welcome, man. What a surprise.
Oh, man. Welcome to the show. Yeah, we'd surprise you with that. So, Keith, we're talking about Travel Buddy Games, your game with the Great Barrier Reef card game. And one of the questions that Thomas had was, how was the pitch between the two of you? Did you have a small card game and hear about Travel Buddy Games, or was this just conversational between you and Josh?
Yeah, no, I had pitched a game to Josh for Gray Fox. So I'd met him a couple of years before this, and so kind of had him as a contact. And then I was following along with what he did and saw the Travel Buddy Games, and I happened to have a game that just kind of fit perfectly. So I think I emailed it in to you before. It's before back in March of last year, I believe. And yeah, just kind of went from there. So it just happened to be a really good fit for it.
Josh, was it always about the Great Barrier Card Game Reef, or did you see an opportunity with a cool game system to bring in something from for Joel, for us, exotic? I know it's your back door, but for us, it's exotic.
We didn't have to deviate much, right? When Keith pitched it, it was a game about keeping an aquarium, and so there was fish already going into the patterns that they were in, and we brainstormed together on how we could repurpose the system somewhere else. Great Barrier Reef was one of the options. Bird Cliffs of Norway was something we kicked around for a little while too.
Okay,
but but Reef is what stuck, and part of that might have been because of its original theme. It wasn't that far off, and the changes that we made were only very few. I mean, the development on this game was quick and easy, and the thematic changes were to scrap some things that that you might find in an aquarium but wouldn't find in the ocean, and replace them with life native to the place where we wanted to feature the game.
And you're in the middle of doing all these scuba diving lessons, so you had to think, oh my God, this is like karma just raining down on me. This is great here. One of the things I wanted to ask you,
brain, but for whatever it's worth, scuba diving in the Midwest is not quite so as exotic as scuba diving in the Reef.
Yeah. So Keith, one of the things we were talking about before you got on was the tension that is in the game that you find in 2 or 3 different parts, and the most tense, of course, is that push-pull on the scoring of the points, but also picking the cards from the market and then deciding how am I going to screw myself by covering the things I need or covering the things I don't want, which is better for me. That's 3 different things. Were there even more tension points and you had to pare them down to that? Or was this something you upgraded, or was it out of the box? I'm going to have 2 or 3 really crunchy, juicy decisions in a tiny little package.
No, this is one of those kind of, once I had the mechanic with playing a card and determining which card it brought into your hand, which I played around with a few ideas with covering a different quadrant, determined what card you brought into your hand and things like that, and eventually went with the numbers. But once that came together, and it actually came together pretty quick. So this game was originally called Aquascape, and actually I started working on it years and years ago, and it was a much different game, but went through many iterations. But once I kind of landed on this final one, it came together pretty darn quick.
Alex had a good question. Alex Goldsmith from the Dukes of Dice. He wanted to know a question appropriate for either one of you. What game most inspired you, Keith, that kind of outline the developmental direction for Great Barrier Reef? Was there something that you said, oh, this is a cool idea, let me see if I can twist it and change it and put my own spin on it?
Yeah, I love Circle the Wagons and Sprawlopolis and the Steve Aramini and Danny Devine and those guys, the games that they've done. So definitely that card layering. I just wanted to kind of take more of a Circle the Wagons is a 2-player game. Sprawlopolis is a really good solo game. I know you can play it with more players, but I wanted something with that same feeling that was also a bit competitive. So that's kind of where I was going with this one.
Josh, is this too cutthroat for a travel game that you're introducing to your partners in a hostel in the middle of Romania, or is this friendly enough to bring to people that have never played games before?
I mean, I think it's friendly enough.
Okay,
honestly, I do. I mean, the only sort of direct player interaction is when you play a shark and bump up a scoring thing that you're going for and bumping down something else that someone is going for. And one of the things that I love about this game is that nothing ever gets you nothing. If you've made a pattern, it will pay you, right? When you even if your opponents, everybody at the table gangs up on you and runs your stuff straight down to the bottom, none of those things are worth 0. You'll always get something.
Right.
And honestly, I love this design because you get out of it what you put into it. I can sit down and play this game in 20 minutes with somebody who is into lighter games, or I can play the same game in 40 minutes with an opponent who wants to really get crunchy and grind it out and make the optimal moves. And so it fits that thing that I'm going for, and I'm absolutely confident I can throw this in my pack and teach it at a hostel. It's a litmus test for the games that we sign.
So Keith, yeah, good. Keith, one of the things that the name file and I were talking about the other night, we played Concordia, and one of the cool things about Concordia is Euros get a terrible reputation for having no interactivity, but a good Euro actually has the kind of interaction that doesn't what Josh said, the no zero thing, where you knock a person off of their route, knock them off a peg a little bit, and then they've got to steer around that. That steer around is actually a fun part of the game if you can pull it off. It's kind of satisfying when somebody throws a roadblock and you're able to get around it. So there is player interaction, and I think you pulled that off. Keith, was that what you were going for here in the interaction between the players?
Definitely, yeah. I didn't want something too mean and in your face, but it's one of those games where if you're going after a certain pattern of fish, and then you realize that everybody's ganging up on you and trying to knock that one down, you can you can pivot and go to another route and see what they're doing and try to piggyback off of what they're doing and try to increase your score that way. So hopefully, there's good player interaction, but it's not a completely mean game. And like Josh said, you're always scoring points. So if you do something, if you get a pattern together and it all comes together, you're getting something for it always.
So Josh, tell us a little bit about the Kickstarter. How many days left do we have on the Kickstarter?
We got 7 days left. We're at the one week mark here, so it's going to wrap up next Tuesday. We're into that home stretch.
Well, the Namefather mentioned the Kickstarter a couple of times. We posted up so the chat crew can look for it. But guys, and that's the Great Barrier Reef card game from Travel Buddy Games. But this is a board game show, guys. So we got to play a board game on a board game show, right?
Sure.
I've got my buddy Steve, the Namefather, who's going to be joining us in just a second. Hey, there he is, Steve, Keith, Josh, Steve.
Hey, Keith. How you doing?
Great. How are you?
Doing all right. Salud.
Hey, while I'm setting up the game, Steve, you got any questions for Josh or Keith? I think we covered all the chat crew questions.
No, I think you covered the questions I've been monitoring in there. It was a lot of interesting chat. Folks are really behind it, so good job.
Strain said he did discover the Great Barrier Reef, but it was in Civ 6. So that
I wasn't counting that as a question.
I've had to sideline that game to get any amount of work done while working from home. It's in timeout.
So Steve's going to tell you about the game. We're playing the Boudin Bowl. It's all set up. Keith and Steve and I have all set up. But Steve, you want to give a quick rules for the chat?
Sure. I'll give you a little synopsis of what's going on. We met beforehand online to talk about this. We set up 4 categories. BJ will read them. BJ and I'll read them off to you. We each drafted games that would fit these categories as far as we see them, and our job is going to be to sell them to you. We've got to try and figure out if we can kind of tweak you into thinking ours was the choice. And BJ, I think, mentioned before the show that treat this as kind of like a little football metaphor. The winner gets 7 points. The second place gets 3 points for a field goal. Third place, or loser, gets no points, fumbled and interception.
Fumble.
Treat this as 4 quarters of a football game. We'll add up all the points at the end and see who had the most. The only important rule to remember is that if it's a tie at the end, BJ loses.
Yeah, the tie never goes to me. All right,
seems fair.
You got the rules of the game there, Josh?
I think I can handle it.
All right. Okay. All right. So Steve and Keith, why don't Steve, you take the first one? We're gonna do appropriate for you, Josh. You're gonna recognize most of these categories as appropriate for tonight's discussion. Backpack games. We're gonna try to sell you on a backpack game in the first quarter.
All right.
Great.
So I'll kick it off. My backpack game was I had to think about, first of all, small enough to pack. If something goes wrong on the hike, I can find another copy. It's somewhat protected, and the people that I'd be likely to hike with would be willing to sit and play it with me. So I went with Sushi Go. Kind of thing that's small enough to pack in a protective tin. Once we get to the place where we're hiking to and ready to picnic, the family would be willing to play a round or 2 of that with me before they packed it back up and said, let's get back on the road again. So Sushi Go was my first choice there.
Sushi Go coming out strong. Now, Keith, that's GEAUX, just to make sure we have that.
Absolutely.
All right.
I'm going to go with one that I played the entire time at Gen Con. I carried around with me, and I've actually played it live on the show with Steve, although it's going to be a tweak to this game. It's Medium. I don't know if you've played Medium before, but we're going to play Medium, the just one version. That's where you have the 2 cards, and you're trying to get the median, but you're playing with the whole group. Because remember, when you're playing Medium and you're at a hostel in Romania or Albania, you're at a hostel in Albania and you're playing with people who've never played games before, you want to make sure that everybody's involved. So play Medium, use the words, but the people that are using the guesses to try to get to the medium, if they have the same ones, they're going to get knocked out just like in just one. And then we rotate around having the guesser. So everybody's participating, and that's Medium. And literally, you could play Medium anywhere. All you need is words. That's mine. All right, Keith, you're up. What you got? We're making it tough for Josh here in the first round.
All right. Well, I've got
a good salesman here, by the way.
We're about to kick Joel off the show here. Joel, don't miss playoff games from the last 2 years. Please, Joel. All right, so go ahead. What you got, Keith?
I'm going to sell you on a great little backpack game. It only takes 18 cards. It comes in a wallet, and we mentioned it earlier. It's Sprawlopolis, which is a perfect game for taking the backpack because you can play it with other people. It's very simple rules. But you can also play it by yourself, and it's one of those perfect big game in a small package.
Tough
That's
choice.
a solid pick. That's a great game.
My goodness.
All right, so
now I gotta give you guys 7-3 and nothing.
You got it.
only 3 choices.
Based on games that I can put in my backpack.
Or based on how we talk smack to each other and try and talk each other down in your eyes.
Or just based on the guy
Oh boy.
who checked to come onto the show tonight. Don't forget about that. Yeah. Yeah, or you can go to the other back crew, they'll help you out too. But hey, if you don't mind, walk us through what scores are you going to give us?
So I think we're going to award the touchdown score to BJ because it has that social component that I look for in games that I throw in my backpack. The fact that he can play that with a couple people or a huge group, I absolutely love it. The medium just one thing seems like the sort of thing that I can order a round of beers at the hostel and get everybody to the table for. So we're giving touchdown BJ.
Yeah, thanks. Chris said, don't forget to get your words in Romanian, though. Make sure you bring out the words in Romanian.
That's fair. But since I want to go to Albania, I don't know that the Romanian's going to work.
Yeah, I don't know what the language is in Albania. Do you know?
It's Albanian.
Albanian? Okay, there it is.
Yeah, I mean, Greek and Italian will get you around a little bit as well. But if you wanna speak the local language, it's Albanian.
Thomas didn't like the other 2 choices, but let's hear what Josh has to say because Thomas, he's the deciding factor.
Well, I mean, honestly, I don't love either of the other 2 choices, but I think I'm giving 3 to Steven. Because Sushi Go is another one that I've brought with me, and I know that I can play with other people, and I think I could teach it at a hostel. This is no dig at Keith or Sprawlopolis, because I love him and I love that game, but I can't imagine not playing it solo. I play it and it breaks my brain, and I have to think so hard about how to do stuff that if somebody else is there trying to figure that out with me, I'm going to be frustrated that they're not doing what I'm doing.
All right. So first quarter went medium with the touchdown, Sprawlopolis with the interception, and Steve, the name father, settles for a field goal with Sushi Go. Not
Steady
bad.
Eddie, I'm on the board.
Not bad. All right, Keith, you're up. Let's take the second category. Second category, Josh, for the second quarter is 2-player games. I know you play a lot of 2-player games with you and your wife. So tell us, Keith, what you got.
All right. Well, my pick for a 2-player game is one of my personal favorites to play with my wife, and it is Seven Wonders Duel. I just think it's a perfect drafting game for 2 players. I've never seen it done better. I love the way that there's multiple ways to win, so you always got to keep in the back of your mind the military or science victories. And I just think it's a great game.
Strong.
Very solid.
Steve, what you got?
I just went with my favorite 2-player game of all time, which is Targi.
You took the easy choice, Steve.
Well, when you get the top draft pick, you're not going off the board. The war room is easy at that point for me.
Yeah, that game is so good.
I really love Targi. The elegance of the choices that you make along the outside of the board, giving you the intersecting cards in the middle, and having to figure out what do I need to play, what do I need to collect, what do I need to block. It's just a brilliant 2-player game.
That's a tough one. He had the very first pick in the draft, and he went right for Targi because I'm sure he's assuming somebody else is going to pick it. But I wouldn't have. I wouldn't have picked Targi. I would have gone with mine. And in fact, if you remember, I erased my earlier choice and moved back up to get this one just in case Keith wanted to steal it. And that is Watergate. Hey, I wasn't around exactly at that time, although sort of was. But I don't remember Watergate until later. But Watergate really would have been my number 1 game of the year last year, except for the fact that BGG kind of played Detective City of Angels, and I was just blown away by that one. But Watergate all year was my favorite game experience. I absolutely loved Watergate. I think it's a great push-pull. We talked about push-pull with the Great Barrier Reef card game. Same thing in Watergate. You're trying to keep track of these 2 or 3 elements, trying to make sure the momentum is on your side, trying to make sure that Nixon never gets 5 cards, because if Nixon can play 5 cards every round, the Washington Post is in deep, deep trouble. And I love the flavor text. Philip Millman, I think, did a great job in the back of the rule book. He's got the whole history of the Watergate saga, which you can look at, but a lot of it's just right there on the cards. And we don't play Watergate where we're throwing out numbers or doing. We actually say, I'm playing Margaret Mitchell, or I'm playing John Dean. I mean, they become alive. Some people say it's not. It's just an abstract, but I don't think so. I think Watergate is a fantastic 2-player game with a great thematic experience. And I'm bringing the heat here, Josh.
Well, touchdown, Steven.
Ooh.
Targi is a fantastic game. It's a game that I love for 2. It is in my collection. I've been trying to get my hands on the expansion forever. So there's no way I cannot award him full points for that. That game's incredible.
By the way, Andy Steiger says it's going to be available in English, and we should see it sometime at the end of this year, the expansion.
I think so, yes.
That's what we're hearing.
That's
All right.
great.
I got to admit, that's a pretty good choice there. But you've got a tough decision between me and Keith. Where are you going to go?
I mean, you think I have a tough decision, but I'm giving 3. I'm giving 3 points to Keith. 1, I love the game. 2, I love the theme, and that carries it for me over Watergate in that the theme is less attractive to me, and it does that thing that we talked about earlier about limiting my pool of players. If I can get games that I know I can get other people to play, those are going to go up a score for me, and I'm going to have the same problem with Watergate that I've had with Twilight Struggle, which is I'm going to find 1 or 2 people who will play that with me and never get it to the table. That box is collecting dust, much like your score pile right now.
That's fair. Targi and Duel, both of them a lot more exotic. Steve, I should have been thinking exotic for every choice. Watergate, just not exotic. Just not. All right, so it's halftime. Name Father. What's the score for us here?
Halftime, I've got 10 points, and BJ's got 7, and Keith has 3.
All right, Josh, you're in
for a comeback.
Yeah, exactly. Josh, you're in charge of the music and the halftime show. We're going to set up the second half here. The third quarter is appropriate to what we're talking about tonight. It's card games. And this time, I think, Keith, you went first, right? And then Steve. So it's back to Keith. Keith, you're going to be first. So go ahead. Keith, what you got?
All right. So the card game I picked, one is it's nature-based for the theme, which is something I really enjoy. It's a super thinky card game, which is, again, something I enjoy. And then I just love the look of the new version. It's got beautiful artwork from Best Sobel, and the game is Arboretum.
That is a good
Love
choice.
this game.
Mm-hmm.
That is a good choice. I love the look of that game. I've actually never played it, Keith, though, but I love the look of it.
That game is gorgeous and mean. You
Yes.
have to play this, VJ. It's brilliant.
It's on my list. All right, Steve, what you got?
This is where I was actually thinking that Keith was going to be making his move because Arboretum's a great pick. I got to pick last in card game, and after that point, I was thinking I wanted to go a little bit old school. Thinking card game, you think cards in a box, but I'm thinking a little bit bigger box and a lot more cards. San Juan. I went back a ways to go to one of the old school Euro card games that really started things off there. So see if I can salvage points with that one because I think Arboretum's a tough get this round.
It's going to be tough. So, man, do I need to put with those 2 great games? Do I really need to put my choice out there, Josh? But I will.
Yeah, I mean, let's see what you got.
Mine
I like having options. I'm a variety guy. Give me the buffet.
Mine's a game about fish down under called the Great Barrier Reef card game. Let me tell you about that one. No, I should have picked that one. But I picked one.
Not fair. I'll have to recuse myself as judge.
I think we did that with Bonacor. I kept picking stronghold games just to make him.
Yeah, you did.
I was losing so bad. I had to just do a zigzag on the fourth quarter. No, mine is a game that is a card game. It's a game we talked about tonight. I was hoping Alex was going to be around because he would yell at me because he says it's not a card game, and that is Baseball Highlights 2045. It's a game that I've had trouble getting out with some people because of the theme. Not everybody's into baseball as much as I am, but once people play the game, it's a fantastic game. Now, I wanted to say Bushido because I know how much you and me both like Bushido, but
God, that game's good.
Yeah, it is. It's fantastic. And boy, I want to get more expansions for it.
But I'd have to recuse myself.
I figured that. Yeah, what a fantastic game. But Baseball Highlights 2045, my favorite sports, and it's a game that doesn't do what you think. It's not a baseball game, as in you're going to be playing 9 innings and you're going to be moving people around and all that. It's a game that gives you the highlights, the action. It's almost like watching the 30-second ESPN highlights on Facebook, right? You're just going to see the big action, the big hit, the big strikeout, the big catch. And what I love about Baseball Highlights 24/5 is I've never played in a tournament yet where there's not the big moment, where you lose in the 7th game and you actually can see the fielder reaching over the fence because they top deck that card to steal that big home run that you might have won and stayed in the tournament at Dice-Star Con 2019. But I'm not bitter at all, as you can tell. All right, so that's 3 tough choices for you, Josh. What you got?
It is. Those are three great games and three tough choices. I gotta give you mad props for your sell on baseball highlights. I mean, the game is good, but to hear you tell it, it's even more exciting than it is in real life.
Oh, no, come on.
We're still going to give the touchdown to Keith because Arboretum is a fantastic game. It is a top game for me, top 5, top 10. In a world where I don't make lists of my top things, that one's on it anyway. So that game is great. Between baseball highlights and San Juan, though, you guys have put me in a tough spot. I love these games. I don't know what to do about either of them. The theme for both of them is pretty atrocious. When I pitch somebody on baseball, I lose them and I go, but what if it's in the future and some of them are cyborgs and that brings nobody back to the table? And when I would try and get someone to play San Juan, I'm like, well, you're the governor of a plantation and it's based on a board game, but they made this better because they got rid of the slaves. So
I don't know if that's the best elevator pitch for those two games.
I think we're both getting zeros, BJ.
Yeah, no. I love it.
I mean, I'd love to have you guys split the 3. If we could give a 1.5 points to each of you, we could even round it up and do 2 points apiece because I don't think I can decide between those.
As Ursula says, life's full of tough choices, isn't it? You got to do it. Come on, Josh.
Chat has that help for you. I shouldn't be calling attention to the chat because they say I'm in 3rd place this round.
Oh yeah.
What did they say about that?
Thomas was the only person who commented, and he agreed with you. Keith, top, BJ, and me bringing up the rear.
Come on, chat.
Yeah,
crew.
I mean,
let's see some baseball.
I'm gonna award the 3 points to San Juan for this reason, because even though I've trimmed my collection extensively, San Juan has continued to make the cut. But I've never picked up baseball highlights because I'm afraid I don't have anybody to play with.
I love Mr. Sean. He's well, I'm sold on San Juan after that pitch. I see that. All right.
Look, man, it's a great game for people who love classic heroes. It is. I would rather play it than Puerto Rico. I think it's a fantastic game. It's still in my collection. But we can get a little tongue in cheek with the descriptions here, can't we?
Sure. All right, so let's move to the 4th quarter. One of the things Steve and the name file and I were coming up, we were trying. Well, everybody. Oh no! Look, Thomas says San Juan Black. So I think
Thomas said that twice. He just said twice that I was in last place. It's the same person saying last place each time.
As you can see, we tried to pick things that we thought would be appropriate for you being on the show. And the last one, when I think of this category, the first person in board gaming that comes to mind is always you because you're always talking about your trips. Exotic places, exotic themes in terms of board games. Now that's wide open. So you're going to see some wide open choices here. Let's see who can bring it.
It's a cool category. I'm excited for this.
I'm going to go first because I hadn't gone first yet on mine. And I struggled with this game because there's so many games I was thinking of, but I just went with a game that I really like, that my wife really likes. I'm assuming you haven't played this game, but it's Istanbul, the dice game version, not the main game. And I think I haven't played Istanbul in all honesty, although the Gumbo has played it many, many times. But Istanbul, the dice game, I am generally not a person that plays anything that's called Josh : the dice game, or Josh the dice game, the card game, any one of those things. Istanbul, the dice game is fantastic. You can play it with people that have never played board games before, which I did. My running buddies that are in their 70s, I taught them how to play this game. We had a blast. And you can play it with regular gamers, and it's really cutthroat. You talked about, a knife fight in a phone booth, and Istanbul has that little cutting edge action when you're trying to race for those rubies. But I love the way it looks, and I love bringing it out with people who've never played games before because they look at this and they go, I'm so used to payday in life. What is this that I'm looking at, right? In this tiny little box that you can fit into your backpack. So Istanbul, the dice game from AEG, that's my pick. Take that.
You'll be happy to hear that I've played both. So you didn't try and pitch me something I haven't seen before.
Oh, I was worried. All right, so let's go with Steve. What you got?
Okay. I went with the Cromer and Kiesling game Tikal. And I thought about trying to think about what would be the ruins that I would want to explore. And the Tikal was the choice, not because of the game, but I do like the game. I love the Cromer and Kiesling games. I went with Tikal because I think in terms of exotic places, Guatemala has established a park around Tikal and protected it from development. So if you want to go visit the place rather than seeing the remains of Tenochtitlan or Teotihuacan, you'll be seeing encroachment of the city around it. But there in Petén, you've got everything preserved as it should have been. So Tikal was my choice.
That's pretty strong. Not as good as
Yeah,
this double dice game, but pretty
Steven's
strong.
speaking my language too. He didn't even tell me about the game.
You
If I
gotta-
hadn't played Tikal, I wouldn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good pitch. All right, Keith, you are the last one in the fourth quarter.
All right.
How are we doing on scores here? Just to put a little pressure on Keith.
Close, and I think it's going to make this a whole heck of a lot closer with this pick, because when he laid his out, I thought, ooh.
Yeah, and he went for this early too, and that was a good move. All right, Keith, tell us what you got.
All right. Well, I had to get a game on here from my favorite designer, and most of his games are known for being pretty brown and boring and not much to look at. But this is a game that's vibrant and lots of blues and greens, just beautiful board, beautiful colors in it. And it's got a definite competitive streak to it for sure. We'll say competitive, not mean. But that is Bora Bora from Stefan Feld. I just love that game. It's one of my favorite Felds. And I just think it's not, certainly doesn't look like any of his other games. We'll say that.
Yeah, I mean, oh boy, those are good choices. That's a great game too.
I think we just lost because I saw Josh's response and was, oh.
I know that is
I mean, I won't keep you in suspense. We'll give the touchdown to Keith. Not only is that somewhere I want to go, not only does it showcase a place that features heavily in my Instagram feed when I'm daydreaming about where to go next, but Feld is also one of my favorite designers, and that is one of my favorite games. So touchdown, Keith.
I see that, Keith. I think that's an inside job there, Steve. I think there's a little inside baseball between those two. But all right, so
I mean, maybe he just did his homework and went and looked at my BGG ratings. He had a lot of solid picks on there. I mean, the second pick is also, I hate to deflate some tension, a little bit easy for me, but Tikal is getting 3 points from me because not only is it on my bucket list of places to travel to, the game is also beautiful. I love the 3D element that goes on in there, and it is one of the earliest sort of intro board games I played. I mean, I think my introductory collection was Beyond Mystery Rummy, Settlers, Carcassonne, Clans, Tikal. And so it might have been one of the first 5 games, modern board games that I owned. And despite awarding you 0 points for Istanbul, I do want to visit. And the dice game is a huge improvement over the first one for me. And I will play that dice game anytime.
great game. Josh, we didn't sync up on very many of these, and I let you win in Pocket Mars. How could you come back on me like that, man?
You did what?
No, you beat me fair and square. You whooped my butt at Pocket Mars. All right. So, Steve, give us
I'll buy you some sort of a pity beer the next time we're all able to go to a convention. I'll make it up to you.
I like it. All right. So, Steve, give us the scores for the Boudin Bowl. Who's the big winner?
As I was afraid, Keith played rope-a-dope for the first half. Came on strong in the second, a touchdown in the third, a touchdown in the fourth. He's got 17. I got 16. BJ's got 10.
Wow, I lost another one.
Oh, come back.
And this time I didn't go for comedic effect. Usually all of mine are pretty jokey, and I ended up scoring nothing. But that was a great, Keith. I thought you did a great job, some great choices. And Josh, I liked hearing your thought process on all these. You bought into what we were doing. We weren't just looking for good games. We were also looking for ones that fit, that kind of thematic connection. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm channeling my my inner game show contestant. So maybe I can use this as an audition tape for Who Wants to Be a Millionaire or something.
Or Survive.
Talking through the answers.
I keep waiting to see you on Survivor, Josh. Is it going to happen?
Hey, man, I'm making my sixth application for that show next week.
Okay, now I haven't watched Survivor since probably season 9 or 10, but I will watch. I will guarantee you that if you get on Survivor, I will come back. What season is it on now? Like 52 or 89 or something?
They're 40 right now. Season 40 is all winners.
I will watch if you can get back on. I got off the wagon, but I will get back on it if you can get on there, Josh. And that is the Boudin Bowl. Our game time presented, of course, by Game Toppers LLC. Make your game nights, Josh, a showstopper when you play on a Game Topper. So, all right, board gamers, that's it for another episode of Gumbo Live. Hey, we got the Great Barrier Reef card game out on Kickstarter right now. Josh, how can people reach out to you to talk to you about the card game, which is still on Kickstarter for another 7 days?
People can reach out to me all over the place. I mean, obviously, they should go to Kickstarter and search for the Great Barrier Reef card game. They can find me at travelbuddygames.com. They can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at travelbuddygames.
Keith, this is your chance. You and Josh have got to work together pretty closely on the game. How did that go? This is your chance to brag or to dish on Josh. How did it go in the development of the game?
No, it went really well. I mean, it's been a great experience. And the game is pretty much intact from how it was submitted, which is good. But I think the artwork that Josh got and just the way it's come together has been excellent.
So how can people reach out to you if they have any questions about the Great Barrier Reef card game?
Probably the best place. Yeah, probably the best place to contact me is on Twitter. It's K Piggott Games.
On Twitter. That's it. All right. So make sure board gamers to like our Facebook page, facebook.com/boardgame. It gets us Board Game Gumbo. It helps us get the word out about all of our upcoming shows, including some of the people that were in the chat crew tonight. Mick and Starla from Our Family Plays Games are going to be our guests next week. They are now part of the Dice Tower Network doing some stuff on Board Game Breakfast, if I remember right, Steve, right?
I think so, yeah.
So it'll be cool to visit with Mick and Starla to find out what they're doing. I'm BJ from Board Game Gumbo. Check out the Kickstarter for the Great Barrier Card Reef game out from Travel Buddy Games. Got another 7 days left to do it. And until next time, Josh, Steve, and Keith, laissez le bon temps rouler.
See the world have fun.